This new moon in Scorpio on November 20th is very important. It's karmically relevant. The Scorpio-Taurus axis is the axis of lineage, and it's addressing really deep root questions, feelings, causes, primordial emotions, and primordial consciousness. So let me begin by giving you the background information of where everything is right now. With the full moon, we have the moon and the sun joined together in the sign of Scorpio in 28 degrees. We have conjunct to that also Mercury in 28 degrees that has began retrograding. And those aspects are in direct opposition to Uranus in 29 degrees of Taurus. Now, this is a really strong aspect, and for sure we're going to be feeling it. This is the sudden disruption, basically. This is the innovation, and this is a fresh breeze, but it could also be an electrical shock. It could also feel like fire burning layers off. Astrology is not a one-word fits all tool. This is multi-layered, multifaceted consciousness that is basically infinitely expressing. We have Black Moon Lilith in 26 degrees of Scorpio. And then also Venus is in Scorpio right now as well in 16 degrees. So not quite part of that opposition, but also still in the energy of Scorpio, while Mars has traveled on already into Sagittarius in 11 degrees. Apart from that really strong opposition that is already showing us, okay, this is going to be a moment of intensity because Uranus is the change bringer. Yeah, this is things that are unforeseen, that are sudden, that are out of the norm, out of the box, that we couldn't really grasp, and that might feel disruptive or overwhelming as well. And it's a lot of information that is being processed with both Uranus and Mercury as well in that opposition. A lot of mental energy. It could be overstimulation. It could be a radical change of thought, a radical change of belief, or a change of actions and movement. It could be sudden decisions that have to be made. It could also be, of course, natural catastrophes. We've already seen a lot of that now with Uranus in Taurus, Saturn and Neptune retrograding in Pisces. We've also had a lot of air and water energy coming together, hurricanes, flooding. And of course, the nature, the earth is part of this experience. It's not just you experiencing astrology, but this is a collective expression, right? You are the embodiment of the collective archetypes, and earth is also an embodiment of that. The trees and the natures, plants, animals, everything is an embodiment of that as well. I feel that we're already integrating what we've experienced with the full moon, this heightened realization of coming back to universal truths, to the laws of nature, and also shifting our focus really into the wider perspective so that we can reiterate what is actually important right now. How do we actually want to behave? What is, in fact, the purpose of your existence and of us as a collective humanity? Why are we even here? What are we capable of doing? And why should we do certain things or not? So with this integration and now with the new moon, we're planting a new seed of awareness. And with these aspects, this is really going into really, really deep layers. Scorpio is already known for depth, right? And I feel that the Scorpio-Taurus axis is the axis of lineage, basically. It's body, earth, and death and energy. It's physical matter, non-physical matter. It's the back and forth of being born and dying, and this kind of cycling of energy, recycling of energy. And in these last degrees of Scorpio, this is the phoenix layer of Scorpio. We say that Scorpio has a threefold awareness, actually. The Scorpio that evolves also to the higher version, to the eagle that is able to look down and take a completely different perspective. And then that is again developed into the Phoenix consciousness, which is really a radical moment of being able to dissolve completely and then be born again from the fire, from the ashes, understanding that something that is breaking, is leaving, is failing, is going away, is dying, is at the same time fertile ground, soil, nutrients for something else. And it's a process of purification. And it's also a process of understanding the different layers of perspective of how we think about energy, how we think about life, how we think about existence, right? Venus is also in Scorpio, and Venus is just about to enter the phase where it sets below the horizon. We don't see it anymore. It's entering the phase of invisibility, or the phase of darkness. It's the descent into the underworld, so to say, where Venus leaves, is then in the shadows for several weeks until it emerges again. Is a very intense process of digging deeper into those layers. We have Mercury there as well. And in order to allow something to transform so radically, it needs to be understood. It needs to be explored. And in order to transform an emotion, an energy, a connection to something, we say you need to release it, but in order to release it, what does that really mean? It means to understand the teachings, the lessons, the learnings, the reasons for the existence, for the happening, for the experience of that. And all of that needs to be integrated in order to actually create an emotional shift. And right now, this is happening on a really karmic level. This is really about integrating the lessons and the teachings and the wisdom of not only your life, but perhaps your whole lineage. This is a very karmic moment where if you are able to really understand and dig deep and integrate the lessons and the learnings and the teachings and the pieces of wisdom, that experience allowed you to now cultivate, to now harvest and harness, then that gives everything a purpose and a meaning that allows you to move forwards into the direction of that purpose, of that meaning. It helps you to move through stagnation. It helps you to move through blockages. And emotional release isn't so easy. It's not as simple as saying, I'm not going to have this anymore. Snap my fingers and gone it is. It's a really delicate process, understanding teachings, understanding information, and allowing yourself to integrate it really deeply into your nervous system, into your bones, into your understanding, and therefore then also into your actions, into your emotional field. For you to really transmute an emotion, that requires you to put your ego into different perspectives. That requires you to have compassion with life itself as an expression of duality, as an expression of things that are of your liking and not of your liking. And that is a really difficult task. But I think that right now we are supported in a way, pushed in another way, to really do this. And we're doing it in so many levels. We're doing it in our personal lives. It's happening politically. It's happening with how we treat each other, how countries and nations and groups and tribes treat each other, how people of one side of the globe treat people from the other side of the globe and vice versa, how people from certain classes treat each other, from certain areas of society, from certain genders, or from certain identities. And it's also about how we treat where we are, how we treat the places where we are, the physical spaces where we are. Yeah, that includes your home. How do you treat your home? But it also includes how do you treat the planet? How do you treat food? How do you treat the bus driver and the workers who enable you to have what you're using right now? How do you treat people in another country that you've never known? How do you treat your family when you think about them? In your mind, how do you treat them? How do you treat the idea of what your ancestors have been through? Do you honor, do you understand the teachings and the lessons that come through their experiences? Or are you stuck in an expression of anger? Because anger is the first emotion from the other primordial emotions, sadness, the fear, the shame, the guilt. But anger is always there. It's the first thing we need to unpack if we really want to release anything, if we really want to transform anything. So what has been coming up really strongly in the last days is this topic of emotional release techniques. Yeah, there are techniques to support you in doing that. and also for integrating different parts. It's what we're seeing happening in the collective, but it also happens inside. You have different parts that want different things. You strive towards change, improvement, and fulfillment of your goals. And then there's another part that is constantly manipulating, that thinks that those two don't actually have the same goals, and that perhaps might be an illusion. So there's parts integration that needs to happen. It essentially needs to happen, but right now is a really good moment also for you to consciously choose for it to happen. And in order for that to happen, of course, you need to acknowledge, what do they each want? What are they bringing to the table? What can they learn from each other? What do they have to say to each other? And what is that actual higher goal that they can agree on? Because it might not be so simple as to just speak out the first thing that comes to them, and it might not seem like there's any similarity. We might have to dig through layers and layers and layers and layers until eventually we get to the point where we understand this abstract concept. This is the same. This is part of the same desire, the same wish, the same goal. And that might take a couple of rounds of thinking about it, feeling about it, and exploring it more deeply. This is what Scorpio is really about, going deeper into the layers. Of course, we have Jupiter in square to Chiron. This isn't a new aspect. This has been there already in the last weeks. Jupiter moves very slow and is also retrograding right now. So we are already really aware, perhaps, of the wound. It's not something we need to figure out. We already know how we are damaging each other, how the violence is being expressed right now. We already know what are the consequences of that. We are already feeling the pain. It's really quite obvious. I think this moment is not so much about figuring out what needs to be changed. This moment is more about finally doing the work of changing and understanding that you can set yourself action-oriented goals as much as you want, but you will not be able to consistently carry out those actions if there is constant emotional self-manipulation. So in order to actually become in alignment with those actions, these emotions need to be addressed. And Jupiter is not only in that square aspect, it's also forming a trine to Saturn and Neptune. That's also not new. With the full moon, we had a grand water trine with Mars at the third point of the trine. And now that Mars has moved on, we still have a grand water trine, but now it's the moon that is there, and the sun, and retrograding Mercury. So we're still really much working with the water energy, the water element, which of course is emotions, movement, fluidity, but it's also remembering. It's holding information. It's storage. Water stores information. And this is about what is stored inside of those layers of consciousness, of those invisible layers of matter that we call energy, that we call frequency, that we call waves. Yeah, what is stored even in the spaces in between that. The things that we don't even have a name for, what is stored there? And how can we also focus there to widen our perception in order to access new emotions, different layers of something? I was just reminded right now in this moment of the meditations of Joe Dispenza. If you're not familiar with the work of Joe Dispenza, I highly recommend to read the book, You Are the Placebo. It's a really life-changing experience with such rich knowledge. And then Joe Dispenza also has some guided meditations accompanying the book. And his approach is very much about relaxing the body and tuning consciously into that space in between space where you can access a different consciousness. Yeah, he explains it in the beginning of his meditations. I don't know if I'm able to find the right words for that right now, but there's like a reason why he specifically does it that way. It has to do with the brain waves and how we access consciousness, and it's really, really interesting. Some people are triggered by his meditations because he says the word space so often, but I find them really interesting and really soothing. So of course, working with tools like that right now is going to be very helpful, right? Mercury as well. Communicating, but also communication with your body that also happens through meditation, through visualization. This can also include daydreaming or journaling or just reflecting, can include sharing and speaking about it with other people. can happen silently in your mind. It can happen at night during your sleep. But for sure, this is about processing and allowing information to be moved. Mercury is also about movement and about traveling through different dimensions. And so with this grand water trine, it's also a very benevolent, helpful aspect that we have here, where this change that we're experiencing, these kind of radical feelings of we need to address this immediately right now, because that's what may come up with Uranus. It might feel very urgent, immediate, strong, and intense, whatever is going to happen. But with this trine, we also know that we can use visualizations, we can use compassion, we can use our heart space. We have some protection there. We have some abundance there. It's about finding out where is that abundance. And this is not only physical abundance, this is the abundance of knowledge, of wisdom, of teachings, of stories, the abundance of language, and the abundance of culture, basically. And that culture carries information. That information is not just pure entertainment, but most often that information carries really significant truth and very important and valuable knowledge about survival, and carries a lot of wisdom about connection and community and love. A lot of teachings. So understanding something about how to access that abundance, because that abundance is what is going to help you move through all of these changes, and is also going to help us remember what in the longer string of time it has actually been the intention of humanity, and where along the way have we gotten perhaps lost or off track, and how can we now let go of that side focus and actually just drop those things, getting back onto the main focus. And I feel that this really fits the Sabian symbols that we can read for where the new moon is right now. I'd like to share them with you because they're so interesting. The Sabian symbol where the new moon is in Scorpio reads of a Native American squaw pleading to the chief for the lives of her children. The keynote is love as a principle of redemption. And this talks about the active forces inside of us that are kind of troublemakers, that are seeking to disrupt the sense of wholeness, of unity, and also the feeling and the safety of the tribe, of the community, of the togetherness. And that there's a part of us that understands that this is bad, that this is disruptive, and we're using love to kind of plead for forgiveness, to plead for redemption. And at the same time, it's a natural tendency, it's a natural thing to happen. It is human nature to explore those things. It reads here, the soul is responsive to the experience of unity, but the energies of human nature often follow their self-seeking, divisive tendencies. And so the Sabian symbol where Uranus is in opposition reads, a peacock parading on the terrace of an old castle. The keynote is the personal display of inherited gifts. And it further reads, a great person able to display a multitude of gifts is always, at one level or another, the consummation of a long past of efforts and victories. This is really showing that a person is not able to achieve anything just because, but there's always a long history. Yeah, there are reasons, and it's the sum of many people's actions that lead to someone being able to inherit certain gifts or not. And this can both be something beautiful and something terrible if we think about colonialism and all of the abundance that has been inherited, but at the expense of, one person's victory and another person's horrible loss. And we have so many planets in retrograde right now, all of the big ones, Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, and now also Mercury. This is really a process of going back, looking back and checking, hey, what happened? Also looking back and checking what has been finished that actually should be finished. And also of understanding, how did we even get here? Because the how did we get here offers us those important teachings and pieces of wisdom in order to be able to transmute the emotions and get back on the goal that we actually feel aligned with in this moment or in the long term. It's also a really good moment to revisit the foundations of your practice, the foundations of what maybe got you to a state of success in the past or in the present, and to honor those foundations, to not brush them off, and to also acknowledge that we need to revisit foundations on a regular basis because we might have forgotten certain aspects of what was initially important, of what was initially there. And so to revisit that, to kind of refresh your own way of seeing, thinking, feeling about certain things in your life. And I think we have to be careful here also right now because Mars is in Sagittarius and 11 degrees, generally a nice place of philosophical understanding and a willingness to explore beyond the horizons, but it's also a place where there can easily be an over-focus on a certain ideology, and it can also turn into this kind of fundamentalism, yeah? We have also Mars in square to the nodal axis right now. So I think it's important to understand where your own way of thinking or where your willingness to reach certain goals might lead into an almost one-sided way of thinking, and to really remember to actually include different approaches here and different ways of trying to problem solve as well. But essentially, Mars' purpose right now is also to give that extra spark of understanding what you can do. And along with the other aspects, especially retrograding Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, it's really essential to also look back, to really get to the roots of why is this situation even as it is. And just to give one example from the political realm, we have right now happening the Conference of Parties, the COP30. It's in Brazil this year, and there is a lot of protesting right now, and indigenous groups are kind of storming the conference and claiming their space to speak because they are not given actually a seat at the table. So while a lot of these political figures are meeting in order to strive towards the future and problem solve and go beyond, there's no real addressing of the actual root causes of why we are in this situation, which is that the people who have the knowledge about their local spaces, the stewards and stewardesses of those pieces of nature that are where they are, for example, the Amazon and in Brazil, they are not being given the authority to actually decide and tend to the nature, but instead the land is grabbed away from them. They are violently displaced. There's been a lot of cultural genocide happening in the last centuries. And of course, that leads us to the situation we are in now, where a lot of people don't understand how to actually solve a problem because the people who have real knowledge, real important knowledge about it, they're not being included still. And if we don't fix this, we can't ever actually get to the solutions that will ever be in a state of balance and fairness and bring back real harmony. So this is just one example of what's going on these days. It's the same all around the world, right? We can't actually talk about sustainability and problem solving and using technology when we haven't addressed real actual root causes and root problems that include people being enslaved, essentially, to produce things where their resources are being taken away from them. People are endangered or abused in the process of that. There's so much harm happening in the world, and we need to address that if we ever want any real solutions. Addressing the root causes of trauma in the collective consciousness, and I'm talking about a certain type of trauma that is even induced through the process of birth itself. There's really interesting books out there writing about the goddess archetype, writing about the great mother archetype, and how the process of birth can be such a traumatic experience for the soul as like an act of separation, an experience of discomfort. And that can be a root cause for a lot of anger and hatred that is then subconsciously directed towards that archetype itself. So it turns into anger towards the feminine, anger towards the Great Mother, which of course is reflected also as anger to the Mother Earth, anger to the planet, anger to all feminine expressions. This is also something to acknowledge. How can we actually form a wider understanding of root causes? And with Scorpio, it's also especially addressing emotional, spiritual, and energetic root causes, kind of the things that the soul has experienced, that are hidden, that are invisible, that are maybe not quantifiable, that science really doesn't know how to measure. It's also addressing those things and taking them into account as real, valid expressions and experiences that need to be talked about, that need to be understood, and to extract the lessons and the teachings from that as well, so that also those emotions can be harmonized. Because that's what we also really need to be talking about if we want to look at bigger pictures and bigger conversations of justice, of fairness, of equality, and really healing that conflict between polarities, between genders, between different expressions of human nature. Understanding again how an experience of trauma can be much wider, more abstract, and further behind than just the obvious things. So while we are trying to solve the problems of the earth, we have to also understand, why are these things in our consciousness? What makes us want to behave like that in the first place? Because that is where the root lies. That is where the action will otherwise, if not understood, if not transmuted, will happen again and will happen again. And then it becomes an endless cycle of cleaning up things. It's as if someone was standing in a room with a trash can and just keeps throwing the trash on the floor, and you just keep coming and picking up the trash and putting it in the trash can, instead of acknowledging the person who's there throwing it on the floor. Like, until that doesn't happen, it's just going to be a lot of work, an endless cycle of work, basically. And we can also do that by exploring language, by exploring concepts, and really thinking about, what have we made into the norm, and asking why is that the norm? Another example of that could be even our language and our perception of what is good, what is bad, what is a shadow, what is a light. We have a lot of ways of speaking about things that kind of inherently imply one thing as being good and one thing as being bad. For example, dark and light. Light being good, light being what we strive for, and dark being something that we want to transmute, that we want to change, that we want to basically not have anymore. And how does that concept, already something like this, influence how we then treat certain aspects of the world, how we treat people with certain behaviors, even how we treat people with certain skin colors, where we start associating these light and dark subconscious values onto people's expression and appearance. And that, of course, can lead to racism, abuse, trauma, colonialism, and these really subliminal messages that are already put into the collective through the evolution of language. Even the words positive and negative, right? It's just, when you look at a magnet, it's two different sides of the magnet, and there's no good side and bad side of the magnet. It's just positive and negative. But in our language, we interpret positive as good and negative as bad. Negative coming from roots meaning denial, meaning no, and positive coming from etymological roots meaning placing or putting or living. Already in an act like that, we take something that is essentially neutral and equal, and we start assigning it values that make it go like this, that make it good and bad, or even like this, good and bad. We could have also done it the other way around. So the question is, why didn't we? Why is it this way around? And this is obviously not an overnight process. These are really big questions that we're reflecting upon right now, but it's important to begin somewhere, and it's important to begin now, and it's important to begin yourself, and to also begin exchanging about those ideas. As I mentioned at the beginning, Venus is beginning its phase of descent. It will be setting as the morning star will be moving down beyond the horizon. We won't be able to see it anymore for a period of time. And then next year it will re-emerge as an evening star. So it's shifting its perception. But this also reflects a time where our values are going to be invisible for a moment and kind of reassembling themselves, but in a way that, might be a complete dissolution and a complete reassembly while still maintaining the memory of something. Think of the butterfly. Like, this is an omen that came to me so much this week. The butterfly literally weaves its cocoon. It completely dissolves into this plasma, and then it completely reassembles itself new, but it maintains the memories. So while we are changing our values, it's important to not forget, but to remember, and to allow, with that remembering, also for something completely different to emerge. We might experience another moment of triggering as Venus and Chiron will be in opposition again. It might be a moment where we feel a conflict of values, or we are afraid of the values that maybe emerge that are not always in alignment with what we have been subliminally taught to view as good and as bad. So I think we also have to be brave and courageous to explore that within us and to allow ourselves to just explore those forms of consciousness without immediately ridiculing yourself, without immediately putting yourself into the box of good, bad, evil, and to actually allow yourself to finish the process of reflection and to really remember the root of why you were doing this reflection, to remember the goal, to remember coming back to the universal goal and the intention that you set, allowing that intention to ensure that you are going to stay on the path that is, you can call it good, but I think we need to start finding new words maybe. But ultimately on the path that you are supposed to be on to kind of develop your highest potential and fulfill what you are here to fulfill in this lifetime of your embodiment, of your birth, of your physical shape right now. So allowing that process to happen, it takes courage. It takes courage. And I know that you can do it. And if ever you need support and help along the way, you can contact me or someone else to guide you. I can guide you with astrology. We can look at your chart. I can help you with the tarot cards as well. And I also use many other techniques in various other types of healing sessions. So inner child healing, emotional release techniques, NLP, to move through blockages, to understand things about yourself, and to really help you figure out what it is that you might want. Maybe you don't even know that yet. Maybe you're going through an intense moment of fear and anxiety, and you can also contact me for those things, and we can have a session together and explore what might be most helpful, most beneficial for you right now. I'm also going to be offering in January or February, I'm not quite sure yet how the time frame will be, but I'm going to be offering another 6 weeks supporting your immune system course. Yeah, this is a course about emotional healing of the root causes of the physical pains, symptoms, and diseases that your body is manifesting right now. Because also there, you can go and cover up the symptoms, but it might just keep developing if there's no real acknowledging of the root causes, and your body is an expression of emotions. So addressing those emotions, acknowledging them, tending to them, and getting to really understand what they are telling you is one of the most important parts of long-term health and long-term healing. So if you're curious to explore and if you're ready to make a deep, profound change in your life and in your health, then I'll put all the links down below. You can sign up and I'll send you the information as soon as the next round of the course is going to be launched. So I'm going to leave it at this point for now because it is a lot of information and I could go on forever, but I think this is already a lot to integrate. And with Mercury in retrograde, I do feel that we need extra time buffers of integration somehow right now. So thank you so much for listening. I wish you that with this new moon moment, you can really get to the secrets that you hold and find true value in understanding them with the courage of exploration, and that you will be able to use that knowledge to really understand the purpose that you have in this lifetime and how you can support and help and guide yourself, others, and humanity with your being, with your expressions, with your knowledge, wisdom, beauty, love, and really understanding what has been kept hidden, and that we support each other in uncovering those hidden aspects, not with shame, but with love, but also with understanding of the changes that need to be made and of what is really necessary to address the root causes, so that we don't have to endlessly repeat, but that we can actually begin restoring the harmonious balance of the aspects of consciousness, of the aspects of nature, and for you, also the aspects of your life. It's going to be an intense journey, but I also know that you're ready for it because you're here and you birthed yourself into this moment, into this time. Your soul already knows everything that you're capable of, and I trust that you can do it. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. Please subscribe if you like the channel, or share the video with a friend if you enjoyed listening to it. And I'm super happy if you want to come back, and perhaps I'll see you next time on the next video. We're going to have a full moon and I'm going to tell you all about it. So until then, lots of love from me to you. Goodbye and see you soon.